Hello and welcome to another episode of Soap Goes to the Oscars. This is episode 13. I'm recording on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2023. And for this one, I watched the final movie of the 1929 to 1930s Oscar year. That's the third ceremony ever. And this is the movie that won the Best Picture that year, or at that time, the first 2 years, it was called Outstanding Picture. Third year and on for a while was called Outstanding Production. So this won the top award, and it was All Quiet on the Western Front. So this is came out in 1930, based on a 1929 novel of the same name. This was directed by Lewis Milestone and starred, let's see, doesn't have the stars there. Had a big cast of people, obviously mostly men. And this is the story of sort of the German side of World War One. Starts out with a professor giving an impassioned speech to his students about the glory of serving the fatherland. And they're about to become men, and they decide to join the army as the new second company. They quickly find their delusions broken when they get in and on their training, and they have sort of an abusive corporal. And then they head into war and find that it's not at all the glory that they expected. Quickly, friends die, and they go through horrible battles and all that. The main character is a kid named Paul, and he has several sort of incidents. He gets in a trench with a French soldier and stabs him, and spends the whole night there with the soldier who is dying but still alive, and tries to save him, begs for forgiveness, and then he gets wounded. He goes to a hospital, and one of his friends gets his leg amputated, and they tell him he's going to the bandaging ward, which everybody says they call I can't remember what they call it now, but they say that everybody that goes there doesn't return alive, but he does. And then he gets a furlough to head back home for a few days, and finds that everybody there is very uninformed about the war, and they think it's going well. And he visits that professor that sort of prompted him and his friends to join, and shares his very real experiences with the professor in the class. And the students call him a coward because he's, telling them that it's not everything that, this professor is telling them it is. So he returns to the company and finds this guy named Cat, who kept saying throughout that the war would end when he died, like they were saving him for last. And that happens. He goes out to meet him, and a bomb drops and kills him. And spoilers for a 1930 movie, sorry. So he's kind of crushed by that, and he leaves. And in the final scene, he's back at the front line. I'm reading this from Wikipedia, by the way. He sees a butterfly just outside his trench. He reaches out for it, and while reaching, he's shot by an enemy sniper. And so the final scene shows the second company arriving at the front for their first time, fading out to the image of a cemetery. So that was brief and chaotic, but this was a good movie. This definitely of the movies from this year, definitely would pick this as the winner. And I did have some issues with it. The main thing being, so again, I've said this before. One thing that bothers me about these older movies, and I get it, they're products of their time, but it's the acting. It's that sort of rat-a-tat speaking way that I don't believe people really talk that way at the time. And a lot of these people came from the stage, and they sort of overdo things. Like this guy that played Paul, not a great actor on screen. Like maybe in a stage play, he might be fine. He overdoes it a little bit at times. But the biggest problem I had was, so this is a company of German soldiers, It's an American movie, and they are just 1920s Americans. Obviously came out in 1930, but probably filmed, the end of the 20s. So they're very much 1920s Americans. The one dude, Cat, that died at the end, he was like a 1920s mobster. And actually, I was looking it up, and he was in one of the previous movies I watched, Alibi, where he was a mobster, I think. And there's like a tall, skinny dude named Slim something, his real name, the actor's name. And he looks like he came right out of a Western. And it was very hard. And I'll put this on me, I guess. It was very hard for me to remember that they were supposed to be German. When you sort of saw them in their full uniform, they looked like German soldiers. But they were like, "Gee willikers, guys, let's go have a talk with those fellows." And I'm like, "Nah, I don't know if Germans talked that way in 1920, maybe 1930, whatever, or sorry, 19 teens when the war was going on." But it was very distracting to me. And a certain way through the movie, it took me 2 nights to watch it. I kind of fell asleep the first night. It's a long one. It's like I watched it on Tubi. It was about 2:15. When you look at IMDb, it says 2:30. So I'm not sure if something was cut out of this one. I watched it over 2 nights. And the second night watching it, I sort of had the thought that maybe that was intentional, that they wanted American audiences to sort of to see themselves as the soldiers, but from the German side. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit of a stretch. And to me, there really wasn't anything that made it singularly German, that having them be Americans, would make you feel like, oh, this is what the Germans felt. It really just felt like a bunch of Americans fighting to me. So it was fine. I got over it, but it was very distracting to me. So the other thing I'll say about this is, probably because this is, an older movie, it's almost 100 years ago. You see a lot of this in other war movies. And some of it is some of the story, I recognize from and I'm more familiar with World War II stuff. So like Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, all that stuff. There were things from this that are almost direct parallels to those things. And part of that is just because it's war. So there's going to be similar things. But for example, there's, at the end when Paul comes back after being in the hospital and going back home for a furlough, he returns to find that Second Company is filled with all new young recruits who now are also disillusioned. That reminds me, there's like a whole thing in Band of Brothers about replacements coming in and how, how the seasoned soldiers treat them when they come in, and how the replacements are all gung ho, and the old ones are, battle worn, and the new ones quickly find that out. So that was very much a parallel. And I'm going to just compare the things that reminded me of Spielberg stuff, essentially. So, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this influenced them some way, even though it's a different war, but just from the sort of battle perspectives and story perspectives. So Saving Private Ryan comparisons, like the battle scenes, very similar to the Normandy stuff in Saving Private Ryan, with the main difference being that Saving Private Ryan was much gorier, much more realistic, but very cool shots in this of like shooting up from trenches and soldiers jumping over and bombs going off and stuff. And I'm sure the safety level was much to be desired back then, with bombs going off all around people. But so a lot of those battle scenes were really cool, reminded me of that Normandy invasion a lot. And then the scene I mentioned where Paul is in the trench, it's in a cemetery, I think, and he's in a trench, more of a hole. It's probably like a bomb hole. But he is hiding, and the French soldiers are jumping over him. Now, I almost said German soldiers because, again, they were just Americans. So you always think of Germans as the bad guys. So he's hiding in the hole, and the French soldiers are jumping over him. As one of them's going to jump over, sees him and jumps down with his rifle and bayonet. He goes to attack Paul, and Paul like flips him over and stabs him, kind of covers his mouth to keep him from screaming. And then that's the one he spends the night in that hole with while the man is dying, and he begs him for forgiveness and tries to keep him alive and is not able to. But that scene reminded me very much of the scene. I'll have to look up actor. It's Adam Goldberg. There's a scene in Saving Private Ryan where Adam Goldberg's character is being attacked. Like he's up in a building. Private Mellish, he's up in a building, and there's a German soldier in there, and they fight. And Private Upham is supposed to come up to give him ammunition, but he's a coward and an asshole. So he doesn't, he just hides in the stairwell and cries and then leaves after Mellish is dead. So, but the German soldiers on top of Mellish and like slowly, excruciatingly slides a bayonet into, or knife, whatever, into his chest. And, Mellish obviously dies. And so it was a little less graphic than that, but it very much reminded me of that scene in Saving Private Ryan. So again, would not be surprised at all if Spielberg was influenced by that. So overall, problems that I had with it aside, it was a great movie. Definitely the top one of this grouping of 5 for 1929 to 1930. I would say, looking at this list, so the movies were All Quiet on the Western Front was the winner, Disraeli, The Big House, The Divorcee, and The Love Parade. I like The Big House a lot. I probably would put that as number 2. And I'm struggling to remember. Disraeli I liked, but it didn't really keep my interest. The main actor was good. That was the last one I reviewed, but I probably would put that last. I think that, trying to remember what The Divorcee was. Oh, that was the same guy that was in The Big House and Alibi. I did like that one as well. That'd probably be 3rd, and then The Love Parade 4th, and Disraeli last. Just to give my ranking of, let me just see what this one was. Oh, that was the one in Russia. Yeah. Yeah, I would put, I don't know, I might even put Love Parade last, but Disraeli and Love Parade at the bottom there for sure. So anyway, this was the final one for 1930. I definitely would recommend this one if you can find it. Right now, like I said, it's on Tubi. There's ads, which extended it out a little bit, but it's free. And Tubi actually has quite a few old movies on there, a lot from my list here. So I'm hoping that they stay on there by the time I get to them, which may still be a while. But always love the free ones. So next up will be the 1930 to 31 Oscars. Again, still called Outstanding Production at that time for the Best Picture. And this one we got Cimarron, East Lynne, Skippy, The Front Page, and Trader Horn. Looks like I might be able to, I might have to get one on DVD, but the rest I think I can get for free somewhere, or a cheaper rental. So yeah, moving on to the next ceremony year. Ceremony number 4, only 92 left to go after that. So that is all I have for this one. I know I was all over the place with that. I always do these sort of in my head, and then they never quite go as planned. So hopefully you can follow. And if anyone's listening, and if you are, thank you. But that's all I got. See you next time.